Hello, welcome to Inflow Communications, focus on the contact center. In this session, we'll be covering PureCloud by Genesys, configuring queues. Our agenda today is going to cover logging into PureCloud, navigating to the administrator's menu, and then under the contact center menu of options, we'll be configuring several options from ACD skills, utilization, wrap codes, canned responses, and then configuring the elements of the queue itself. So let's get started. To get started, first you'll log into PureCloud. Once you're logged into PureCloud, you'll need to be an administrator to configure the queue options. At the top of the menu, you'll find an option for admin. Select admin. And once you're presented with the administrator's menu, you'll notice on the right-hand side under Contact Center, these are the options under Contact Center. These are the options that we're going to configure today. Now I won't be configuring all the options, as some of these options I'll save for an advanced tutorial. Let's get started with ACD skills. Now the interface itself is actually very easy to navigate and easy to understand. If I wanted to create new skills, and you'll notice on the left-hand side we have our menu options under Contact Center from ACD skills, utilization, queues, wrap-up codes, email, canned responses, and code browsing. You'll notice if I wanted to add an ACD skill, I'll simply select this Add Skill button right here. From the drop-down, you'll create your new name, and I'll just call this A New Skill 1. And to add the skill, you simply hit Save. Now I'm naming these A New Skill just so they land at the top of our list for easy reference. Let's go ahead and create two more skills. So I'll select Add Skill. Using the same naming convention, I'll add New Skill 2. And then lastly, I'll add New Skill 3. And pretty much that's it for creating skills. So now we have our new skills, A New Skill 1, A New Skill 2, A New Skill 3. Now let's take a look at utilization. Now for those of you not familiar with the term utilization, this really refers to simultaneous interactions. On the PureCloud platform, agents can handle multiple phone calls, chat sessions, email, callbacks, and social media simultaneously. So you'll want to configure the system to the maximum number of interactions per type that you prefer to add for the agent. Let's start at the top with voice calls. Now in most contact centers, agents will only take one voice call at a time. So you can see here my voice call is set to maximum capacity of 1. Now off to the right you can select other media types that would allow the voice calls to be interrupted. However, in this case, because we want just the voice calls answered by an agent and given full focus to the voice call, I'm choosing not to select any other media types. As I mentioned earlier, most contact centers have their agents handle one call at a time without regard for other media types. Now if you look below with regard to chat, chat is very different. Because chat is sort of like Messenger or social media where you're handling multiple conversations at once, most contact centers want their agents handling multiple chat interactions simultaneously. Now you can see here, mine is set for 5. If I wanted to increase this, I simply increase here. Let's go to 8. And then next to that, I have these options of what other media types is it okay to interrupt chat to present to my agent. Now I have selected social expression, email, a voice call can interrupt a chat session, and a callback, which is also a voice call. In order to select the different types, you would just type in below a name of an expression you're looking for. Now in this case, all of ours are already configured, so you wouldn't see any types there. Going to the next level, you have email. Now email is very common to have multiple simultaneous email interactions all at once. In my case, I've got it set configured for 8, but if I wanted to increase that to 10, simply hit 1, 2 more times, and I've got 10 email interactions simultaneously. And likewise for email, I'm going to allow social expression or social media inquiries to come in, voice calls, callbacks, and chat, the ability to interrupt an email as well, because the idea is that my agent should be able to handle a chat session, email, and these other types of media. The next one is callbacks. Now a callback is technically a phone call, so you notice I've got this set to 1. However, if I wanted to change this, I could but most people are going to select just one. Now under select media types, this is the drop down you would see that would allow other media types to interrupt the callback. Now because this is a phone call, I'm not going to choose any other options. However, I'm showing this to you so you can see that the drop down has the other media types listed. Lastly is social expression. Social expression is social media interactions. Today on PureCloud, Twitter is integrated directly with the feed or the interactions for agents. Now here I've got it set for 5. If I wanted to set this for 8, select 8, or if I wanted to decrease it to 3, simply change my options. And then next to that, you guessed it, you've got email, voice, callback, and chat can all interrupt social media. Once I'm done configuring these options, hit save, and you're ready to go. On the left now, we have queues, but I'm going to choose to come back to queues in a moment because we're going to select some of the options we're about to configure to add to our queues. So we're going to skip this for a moment. Let's go to wrap codes. Now wrap codes are the reasons for the call. You may know them as dispositions or termination codes. Most different contact center solutions call them something different, but wrap code is what it's called in PureCloud. Now to create a new wrap code, simply use the button at the top, create wrap code, the drop down, and I'm going to use a new wrap code 1 using the same sort of naming convention we had previously. I'll save that. Let's add a new one, a new wrap code 2. And then lastly, I'm going to create a new wrap code 3. Once I hit save, you can see how easy it is to add those wrap codes. If you ever need to edit them, go to the right-hand side and you have an edit option. This also allows you to delete the wrap code as well. So lots of easy options. Most of PureCloud is set out logically and easy to manipulate. It's really intended for self-management. Now let's look on the left and go to email. Now if you wanted your email to come into the PureCloud application as well, you don't need to change your email address. To add an email, you must first add a domain. The most important part of the domain is the subdomain, mypurecloud.com. When you create a new email, you're going to put mycompany.mypurecloud.com. This is what is known as a domain. Most likely your domain is www.mycompany.com or chris@mycompany.com. That's the domain. In this case, we want to create a domain specific to your name with the extension .mypurecloud.com. This is how we associate emails directly into the actual interactions and the queuing mechanism. Now I've already got a domain already set, but if I wanted to create a new domain, you would select add domain at the top. I could put a secondary domain here. And I'm going to add a fictitious one. And you'll notice at the very end, while I'm sitting there typing over it, at the very end there, whatever name I choose here is going to append mypurecloud.com. Now I am not going to save this domain, but this is how you would simply put it. If your company name was XYZ Company, you would add XYZ Company.mypurecloud.com. Now once you've created the domain, you can go into Edit. And in Edit is where you're actually going to create your email addresses. Now it's very common in your contact center to have an email address such as help@mycompany.com or techsupport@mycompany.com. You're simply going to add your email address to the new domain you've created, and you'll notice here I've got assist@inflowcommunications.mypurecloud.com, demo, and help. If you wanted to add another one such as tech support or customer service, we hit the add email address at the top, customer service, and you'll notice it's already going to assign the @inflowcommunications.mypurecloud.com. Now here's the next options that you'll want to configure. Always route to this queue. You can select your queue names from the drop down and add them here. This is how you associate incoming email directly to a specific queue. All the options are really laid out for you in an easy fashion. Now here for skills name, you know we created the new ones. I can add a new skill, and there's my new skills there. I can add multiple or a singular one. In PureCloud, there is a language skill as well that's already built in. You may have to configure the spoken and written, but in this case, you can see my drop downs. Since this is email, it might be a good idea to have English as a written skill. And then here you can set your priorities. Now below that, you'll notice always route to this flow. One of the things that you can do with PureCloud is that when you have an IVR flow, it also applies to an email. So when the email comes in, you can give it certain treatment and then present the information to the agent. So if you have a flow built, an IVR flow commonly, you would give it the name here and address it here. Now I'm not going to configure anything here. That's just informational for you. Now down below you have this from name. So your from name is going to set the outbound email address where it's coming from. In this case, I'm going to say customer service, and you're set, and then at the bottom it says reply to customer service at inflowcommunications.mypurecloud.com. Now I'm not going to be saving this, but you can see that as you configure options, additional options are automatically presented to you. They're set out in a very logical fashion, so configuring the options is actually fairly straightforward. Let's cancel that and get on to our next option, which is canned responses. Now canned responses are a way for you to create often referred to as frequently asked questions. I get that question quite a bit. While not technically frequently asked questions, they work in the same fashion. Now, adding one additional piece there. When you create canned responses, you can actually create a library. Think of a library as attributing to the subject at hand. It could be customer service, it could be tech support, whatever your particular business needs. Now in this case, you'll notice I have these libraries already configured, the demo library. I have an email library. This is a library of responses that would pop up when an email comes in. You could also break your libraries down into things such as subcategories, product A, product B, and you'll notice on the right hand side when I selected product A, I have canned responses for the product price, the product description. So you can get very specific about how you create your drop downs and your canned libraries. Let's go ahead and create a new library by hitting Manage Libraries at the top. To create a new library, it's very simple. As with everything else we've seen, select Add Library, and I will call this a new library. Once I save that, I now have a new library. Now going back to the canned responses, when I select a new library at the top, you'll notice I have no responses. However, there is an option here to add response. So once I go into response, I can give this a new product, and I could add my information right below. It looks very much like a text editor. And we'll just make up some information. Price is $149. Description. So as you're adding libraries, you simply add them. You can notice here as I'm adding responses, I can actually point them to libraries here. So if you were doing them collectively, you don't have to go into each one independently. You can do it just like this as well. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set it for my new library. And down below, I have the option of saying create another one when I save this one. It'll automatically keep you in there and ready for the next one. So here is a new product. And this time I'll say 1. Add your new description here. And I'll save and create another one. So you can see really when you're creating the libraries and really anything you do in PureCloud is fairly straightforward. Let's go back up to ACD skills. Let's go back into canned responses, and now you can see there's my new library, my 2 responses. I can edit the response off to the far right or delete the response. So creating a library of options or canned responses to support your agents on the fly is a handy way to present them with critical information such as frequently asked questions. And if you think about things in tech support has a lot of deep layers that are reference materials or healthcare and finance. There's quite a bit you can do with managed libraries. So when you're creating your libraries, think logically about the information that most likely will be needed for the type of work that is being presented. Now, I did say that we would go back to queues once we've configured a few options. Let's do that now. So as I go to queues here, in order to create a new queue, you simply use the create queue at the top. Now down below, these are all the queues that I already have. If I wanted to create a new one, hit the plus create queue. Now let's do this, a new queue 1. Now right below, when you're creating queues, oftentimes when you create a queue, you're mirroring another queue. So you can simply select the queue you want to copy from. It will copy all the settings and the members. Now in this case, we're going to do it from scratch so I can show you all the options. Let's go ahead and create this queue. And now we're directly inside the queue. It'll automatically take you in to configure the rest of the options. Now, we're going to go through each of these tab settings at the top here. Very straightforward as everything else we've seen. First, you've got your settings for a new queue, and then you've got your after call work and then after call work timeout. So you can select option. Option means it's optional for the rep, whether they use it or not. Mandatory means yes, the agents will have after call work, and discretionary allows them to toggle through it. If you have mandatory in a timed box, meaning the agent would stay in after call work, you're forcing them to take time out between calls. This is what you would do here, mandatory time box, and then set your after call timeout off to the right. And lastly, mandatory time mandatory time box with no early exit. And then here you can also set your options. So you can see it's pretty easy to configure. It walks you through when as soon as you select an option, it presents the next. Now let's look at evaluation method. Evaluation methods are how are we transferring the call to agents, or how are we selecting who should get the next call or interaction, because remember, this can be a phone call, an email, a web chat, or social media. Now all skills matching is the default. You can also use best available skills or disregard skills and go to the next agent. In this case, it'll be the longest idle agent. Now down below that is a routing method. There are two methods for routing in PureCloud. One is the standard ACD, first in, first out, next available agent. The next one is known as bullseye. When you think of bullseye, you think of the target and then larger rings. This sort of routing works the same method. Typically, you're going to try and get the call to the primary location, which might be customer service. However, after a few seconds or whatever the period of time is, you may want to broaden that scope. It's called bullseye routing. I refer to it as casting the net further and further. Let's say after 30 seconds, we now want the call to ring to another destination for 30 seconds. So it's going to be simultaneously looking for users. This gives you the flexible advantage to expanding the scope of routing and searching for an agent based on time parameters so that calls do not get stuck in a queue just because there's no other destination. It's likely that you'll want to expand the search capabilities based on timing so that your calls or interactions don't get stuck in queue, whether they're an email, social media, a telephone call, or web chat. So that's what bullseye routing is. You can have up to 6 separate rings, meaning you can cast the net further 6 separate times. It's a tremendous opportunity to widen the scope of search when you're trying to get a caller or a client through an interaction to someone to facilitate helping them. Now the next option we'll configure at the top is our members. Probably the easiest thing to do. I can simply type in a name of an individual I'm looking for. I'll put myself in this queue, and you'll notice here I also have a Chris Test. I'll put my other self there as well. That is actually a username that I configured there. Now, once you've decided who will be in the queue, hit the plus sign right to the right here in the center, and those users are now in the queue. Now, looking at wrap codes above. Earlier we created some wrap codes, and this is why I wanted to come back to this. Our wrap code started with A, and there are our 3 new wrap codes. So I can simply select the wrap codes that I'm looking to push to the actual queue, to assign the queue. And the advantage for having the wrap codes is that if you have an agent that takes customer service calls as well as tech support calls, based on terminating those different types of interactions, they'll be presented with the proper wrap codes. And so that's what the purpose of this is. Once I've decided I've got the 3 here configured, I will select the plus on the right. And those are my wrap codes for any calls coming into a new Q1. And when I say calls, I mean interactions, emails, social media, etc. Now, we're going to get into each of the media types: voice, chat, email, callback, and social expression. The number one thing that most folks look to do is to attain their level of success in handling interactions, commonly known as the service level. This is where you're actually going to configure your service level targets. Now, the 80-20 is the default. If you're not familiar with 80-20, it means I'm going to handle, or set my goal for handling 80% of calls in 20 seconds or less. You can absolutely change this. You can see the configurable options are very easy to manipulate, and let's change this to 25 seconds. Now, the calling party name. This might be, if you're placing an outbound call, what shows up on caller ID. So I'm going to just say mycompany.com. Now the calling party number is actually easier to understand because everyone understands caller ID in that regard. Here's what I'll say about calling party name. It does not always show up. It's really dependent on the carrier at the local end whether or not they can present the name, but you can certainly configure it here along with the caller ID. Now the alerting timeout. This is really saying how long should we flash phone calls, we're on voice right now, to the agent before we roll to the next agent. Now 8 seconds is about 1.5 rings. I normally change this to 15 to 18 seconds, which is about 2.5 rings. You can certainly set the timer the best you see fit. I like to set it right about 15 to 18 seconds. So with that said, I'll do 15 seconds. Now below that, you see where it says in queue flow? The IVR is responsible for presenting what the caller will hear while they're in queue. Now what you can do here is go to the drop down, and I happen to know that we have one there for, let's see. Now I happen to know that we have one here for demos, so what this is basically saying is when this call is in queue, this is how we will treat the call. It could be anything from messaging, making routing decisions while the call is in queue, etc. On the right, you see where it says default script. One of the great things PureCloud brings to the table is the ability to create an agent workflow script. In this case, I can point to a script that will do a screen pop for my agent, and in my case, I do have a customer service script. When I point to the script here, I'm basically telling the system when a voice phone call comes in, play this demo announcements in queue, and then when the call is answered, I want you to screen pop the customer service screen pop. This is fantastic because, again, if you have an agent who does customer service and tech support or any other group, you can have a separate collection of screen pops for each individual queue with different data points. It makes it so much easier for the agent to do their job. So those are the options for voice. Let's look at chat. Chat also has a service level of 80-20. You can change this to whatever your options are. Let's do 80-25 just so you can see me configuring something. Now the alerting timeout is typically longer. Presenting or ringing an agent when there's an incoming chat session. Again, you can set your timers here. This will then alert the agent, and at 25 seconds it will expire and roll to the next agent. Now here's the default script again. I can simply type in what I'm looking for to add my script. In this case, we won't use a script for chat, but it works the exact same way. And those are the options for chat. It's very straightforward. With email, your service level is a little different. You may have 80% of calls answered in. Notice the service level target is 86,400 seconds. I believe that's 48 hours. Typically, when it comes to email, you may have a service level of, we believe it's acceptable to give a response to the client in 24 hours or less, or 48 hours or less. This is where you would set those parameters. Now the alerting timeout. You can see here this is 300 seconds. I believe that's 5 minutes. It's common to present an email for a longer period of time. And if you think about agents when they're handling emails, because email is not real time like a phone call, you may have your system configured that let me present an email for up to 5 minutes to an agent because they may actually be doing phone calls or social media or something else. So you'll set your parameters based on your specific needs. Lastly, the outbound email address. When agents are responding to emails, you want to present a generic email address. And the email we configured earlier, we can point to our domain, which is our name, and then our email address. In this case, we had assist, demo, or help. What you're really saying here is when an agent takes an email and they respond to the email in queue, this is what will show up on the email header, not the agent's personal email address. So we're going to point it in this direction. I'm going to say close, and now my email is now configured. Now let's look at callbacks. Callbacks are a phone call, just like a voice, right? I don't think I need to explain that. But the service level you are going to set for 80/20, and you'll notice the alerting timeout's a little bit longer. Callbacks are presented a little bit longer, and the reason is this. You may have a callback that has been flagged to send it to the previous agent who spoke to the customer. When you think about the individual who's come into the system, whether they're doing an email, a chat, a phone call, and they've requested, hey, can you call me back at another time, and you set that callback parameter, one of the options is to select present it to me before trying to route it to somebody else. This is one of the reasons the alerting timer is a little bit longer. We want to make sure that you have every opportunity, or the call is presented or the interaction is presented to the agent who handled that customer initially before presenting it to somebody else. So that's what the difference is here. Lastly, you have social expression. Social expression is social media. Currently, PureCloud integrates directly with Twitter. Anytime someone goes to your company's website Twitter feed and types in specific keywords such as, I want to cancel my order, or I'd like to upgrade my services, those words will then flag a social media interaction directly into PureCloud. This is where you configure those options. Now, social media is real-time, meaning you've got somebody right there. Your ability to handle those or to capture those, you'll want to grab those rather quickly. So 80/20 is the default. Again, if I want to change this, and I'll do that just for example's sake. And then lastly, my alert timeout is I'm going to leave my social expression up to 5 minutes. It'll attempt to reach an agent for 5 minutes. In this case, if you want to say 3 minutes, change your timer, and those are all the options. Once you're done setting up your queues and each of the individual tab options at the top, you simply go to the button at the very bottom which says save. And once you save, you're ready to go. Now co-browse on the right. Now on the left we have one option left, co-browse. I'm saving co-browse for an advanced session on queuing. And that's it. Configuring queues for PureCloud, hopefully you've seen, is a very easy process. The system is really intuitive and it walks you through each option. For more information about PureCloud by Genesys, you can visit us at www.inflowcommunications.com, or you can send us a request at contact@inflowcommunications.com. Thanks again.